getting my dad to say I love you.
To say what?
Say he loves it.
Outrageous.
Bloody nonsense.
Dad, we've got another fantastic episode coming up of Getting My Dad to Say I Love You with excellent guest Rich Wilson. You've done some research on Rich Wilson, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's he about?
He's a comedian.
Comedian. He's also got an amazing podcast, Insane in the Men Brain.
Oh, right. Yeah, I forget that people also have podcasts as well these days.
People can do more than one thing now, Dad. You still don't quite know what a podcast is? Is that kind of fair?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think I'm appearing on a podcast as we speak.
You are technically appearing on one. Yeah, he's got Insane in the Men Brain, where he chats to guys about kind of masculinity and emotional issues we might have. And I've done his podcast, which is great.
Does he call himself a working class comic or something?
He is working class. He's very funny. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, everyone's working.
Well, everyone's working. Are you working class?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, well, I mean, I work. If you say working class is working, that's what you have to do, yeah.
But Rich is great. He's also got Insane in the Fem Brain. I'm going to go chat to him, find out some stuff about his parents, and see if he's got some advice on getting you to say I love you finally. Does that sound good?
Well, that would be good.
Great. Rich Wilson's with me now.
Hello.
What's up, Rich?
Hello, it's good to be here. I'm well. Good. You good?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I like to crack straight in on this pod.
Alrighty.
We'd like to ask right out the gate, have both your parents said the 3 magic words I love you to you before?
No, not growing up. I don't remember it growing up. Not a very tactile family. Not a very. Yeah. There was love. They, they made sure that we didn't want for anything. We always had things like we always had the latest sort of toys and things like that. Like we didn't have computer games and things like that, but we'd have the latest toys. But there wasn't a lot of affection as such. I remember it being a big deal when my dad went through a phase of reading us bedtime stories.
Really?
Yes, and we used to get really excited about that. My dad's quite a shy man, so for him to do that was quite a big thing. And it would only take the slightest kind of thing to make him feel silly, and then he'd stop doing it. Right, that's it, But since becoming an adult, definitely my mum and I have been saying we love each other for many years. I think since my kids were born, I remember the first time I'd said to my mum, "I love you," and she said, "I love you too." Yeah. But
how old were you then?
So I would have been 19, 20. Yeah, when my first one was born, 20. So it would have been around that time. So we're obviously all feeling a little bit, sentimental. And, it kind of inspired fresh feelings of care and love. And we were up to that. But my dad, very recently, he's 75, and he very recently opened up to me about his childhood. I kind of knew various bits and bobs. I knew that his nan wasn't very nice. And he'd had a terrible upbringing. But I'd always go, "I love you, Dad," and he'd go, "Yep, all right, see you later." And so
I know that very well.
But now I've been hugging my dad for about the last 10 years, and now suddenly his arms are coming up from his side, and he's sort of hugging me back. And I think he secretly quite likes it. And very recently, and I'm talking. A month, maybe just before month or two.
Oh yes, we got a fresh one.
Yeah, I said, I love you, and he said, "Love you too," and it was wonderful. The day he said,
"Did you call him out on it?"
No, I didn't. No, I just put the phone down, and I turned around and I just turned around and said to my missus, I'm like, "Yeah, that was lovely." It's a nice moment. I
know. So, yeah, he said it for the first time, but he said, "Love you too."
Yes.
And are you now quietly holding out for it? My wife has said this to me before when we started going out. She said, I said, like, "Love you," because I think I was a bit uncomfortable with it because of how I was brought up. So, and she went, "That love you doesn't count. You've got to say, I love you." So, "Love you too." You're like Champions League, right? You're qualified for Champions League, but you're not quite got Premier League yet. Like Premier League winners, where you say, "I love you." Has he gone for the full "I love you" yet, or are you just holding out for it?
Not yet.
Close, though. It's close, mate.
Like we said, I'm just glad that he's acknowledging feelings now. Like I say, he's 75, 76. you know, and he didn't have a good upbringing. He had a tough time, and so he said his own stuff to work out. We're sort of the first generation of men that are really talking about our feelings and things like that, really. And so, you know, he's kind of catching up, and I'm just proud that he has, you know. He still wears cowboy boots, which I think is brilliant. You know, he's a proper. So that's what I mean. My dad is a legend. He's like my mum and dad. Cool, really cool. So, you know, for him to be doing that, I was well chuffed. But yes, you're right. I love you. Him saying it first would be it. That was
we don't want to curse it. Can we just go back a stage when you say he still wears cowboy boots? I would have. You could have asked me to guess 50 ways you were going to finish that sentence. I would have never guessed. My dad wears cowboy. What do you mean he still wears cowboy boots? As in he used to be a cowboy, or he's always wore? Is that something I don't? Does that mean a certain type of man who wears cowboy boots?
Well, yeah. I mean, it takes a certain confidence to wear cowboy boots. He doesn't wear them all the time. He didn't wear them all the time. He's just had cowboy boots since I can remember. I do remember we were on holiday in Cornwall, and and this is when I was my dad was like early 30s, and he suddenly realised that just because he was a dad, it didn't mean he had to dress like an old man. You know, like you see old pictures of people like when they were 14 looking like they were 95 in their suits, and they all look like they worked in a bank. And I remember my dad was on holiday, so we ended up going round the shops, and my dad bought a pair of Levi's trainers that are like suede and denim. I remember them, and he bought these. He was like buying more modern clothing. And then I remember when the cowboy boots turned up, and he didn't wear them. Like, he didn't tuck his jeans in. He'd still wander around, like they'd be underneath, but. Yeah, he's always had a pair, and even now he's still got them, and he's still. Norm Macdonald's got a great bit when he said, like, he's got a bit when he's walking down the street, and like people say that men think about sex every 30 seconds or whatever it is, and he's like, no, it's not true. He goes, I'm walking along, going, oh, maybe I could wear cowboy boots. You know, there's a moment where he says, nah, I couldn't wear cowboy boots, but yeah, it's a certain kind of confidence that you need to pull off. You have to not give a monkeys about what anyone thinks. You'd have to not care a jot.
My dad has a similar attitude to not caring, but like not rather than going, I'm so confident I'm going to be sort of vaguely stylish. His is like he just has food on his shirt. He's got like stains on himself. The other day we were on a Zoom, and he was wearing a Christmas jumper still, like in February.
Yeah, because it was the nearest thing.
That is the thing my mum bought him for Christmas, and I said, Dad, I just realised every time I've seen you, I was at home over January, you wore that every day. Have you washed that? And he was like, and I was like, that's gross, mate. That's so gross. Every day for 2 months he wore a Christmas jumper. Because I honestly think he just, I'm almost certain he rewears underwear just because it's near him. He's like that level of confidence.
Yeah.
He doesn't care.
I think that's it.
It's too confident, or is it lazy? I don't know what the.
Well, it's just that you just don't. It gets to a point where you just no one's looking, no one cares. I'll just do whatever, and that's a rocky road because you're going to end up with a weird must. You're going to smell weird, and that's what happens because no one cares. Yeah, they do. They start to move away from you on the train.
You do need to care. Caring a bit is important.
So change your pants, your socks, keep it fresh, Wear a Christmas jumper, but not all the time,
Not when the sun, not when we're getting into spring. It's alarming. So, but on the cowboy boots, so your dad, then he's had that confidence, and then you got into comedy. When did you get into comedy a bit later in life? Have I made that up? No.
Yeah, I was 32.
Right. How did your dad react to that? Was he? That's a level of confidence you got to. I mean, it's very obvious to say. You've got to be confident to do comedy, but do you reckon that's a thing your dad's passed down to you, or your mum, or where did that come from?
It's weird. My mum and dad are. I think, like most people, they're weirdly confident, but at the same time, horrifically shy. And the slightest thing will just engulf them in shame, and they will shut down. And I think I'm the same. I'm weirdly confident in certain areas, but I also am horrifically shy as well. I was a very shy person growing up. So yeah, it's this weird. It's a weird thing. I'm confident with what I wear. Especially as I'm older now, you're stylish. You are a stylish man. I'm going to say. Well, do you know what? You hope so. You kind of wear what you want to wear, and hopefully people, it's nice that people go, "You look great, mate," and that's nice. It's when it's funny because I do get comments quite a lot, and I do like it. But it's when I know when nobody comments, I'm like, yeah, these are the wrong ones. I shouldn't. I've got this pair of trainers that I've got them on now. I wore them last night at a gig, and there's a guy there that I know is a sneakerhead, and he didn't mention them. And I'm like, oh, these are shit.
You're such a comedian that if you don't get vocal feedback, that you assume it's a bad outfit. You're like, I died on my arse in these jeans. No one said anything. I tried a bit of crowd work. I was like, what do you reckon of these denims? And no one said anything.
This is it. If you're wearing new trainers in front of a sneakerhead, and they don't comment, you know you've made a bit of a faux pas. And
that's funny. It's the neurosis of a comedian.
We're riddled
always.
But I think with my mum and dad have said they're proud of me. They still. There was a couple of years ago, and I was like my flatmate Paul Sweeney. I think you know him.
I know Paul. He's an equally stylish man.
Very more stylish than I. He's incredible. And
bet you've got no instant coffee in that flat, mate. Just
absolutely not.
Pure high-end beans being ground there.
It's a hipster's dream living in our flat.
Do you just eat off an old bit of tree rather than a proper table?
We chucked it all out. It's got a lot of roof slates and just.
You put your calendar on a chalkboard on the wall.
We haven't even got lampshades. The lampshades in the lounge are just like wire shapes.
Yeah. Just not a single sock in that whole household to be found. Just bare ankles.
We're waiting for that to come around when socks come back.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
But he's my barber. He's a brilliant barber as well as being a brilliant comedian. And I remember a couple of years ago, I said to my mum, "I'm going to do a barbering course just to have. I fancy doing it. I'd like to have that skill, just to have it. It was going to be an extra thing." And my mum, she went, "Oh, wonderful! Oh, I'm so pleased you're finally going to get a proper job."
Classic.
And it's that they don't understand what we do. It doesn't make sense to them. They're proud of me. They can't understand what I get paid for. They don't understand it. So they're proud of me.
Have they been to shows?
Yes, they have. Yes, and I remember I was doing an Edinburgh preview in Hackney at the Hackney showroom, wherever it was, and I remember there was a big chunk that was about them, and I hadn't worked it out yet, so it still sounded a little bit offensive. It wasn't. It was all meant with love. And I remember getting to that bit, and Mum and Dad had sat there, and I just went, and I've just forgotten the rest. Anyway, we're going to have an interval now.
Oh, wow. You pulled out of it because you saw that. Oh, no.
I couldn't do it because I didn't really want to upset them. I love them dearly, and the last thing I want to do is upset them. And it wasn't meant to be upsetting. It was more to do with the fact that, parents have been blagging it since time began, since they became parents. You always think that your parents know everything, and they don't. They're just blagging it.
I mean, that is a very funny revelation. The older I get, I'm like, I'm surprised I'm alive right now based on how little knowledge you have. I mean, especially my mum she was a pretty capable mum, but my dad, I was just like, fucking hell, mate, you didn't know what was going on half the time.
No, and they're battling their own neuroses. They're battling they're having to unpack all the stuff that was pumped into them from their parents. My grandparents, your grandparents, they were in the war. And so it was just different. And they had to, and then they were told, right, they said to our parents, right, you're just going to go and get a job, and then you're going to meet someone, a woman, and then you're going to have kids. There was that, it was very, there was a lot of not good parenting advice pumped into our parents, and then they had to unpack it, and then
very dated stuff, wasn't it? Like, I mean, to be fair, like weirdly, my dad, I'm giving him grief, but he was told essentially by his mum, you're talking about his proper job stuff. He was told, you got to get a proper job, be a lawyer or a doctor, classics. And then he became a lawyer, and he hated it so much. All he told me every day of my life was never be a lawyer, never be a lawyer. And so that obviously affected me. So when I was at school, I do remember being like, people think I'm like, all I'm going to do is try not to have a real job, like just something that makes me happy. And I'm lucky in a way that he had such a shit experience, but he turned it into a positive. But you could easily, it can go one or two ways, can't it? He could just continue to pass that on.
Yeah.
But maybe the fact he hated it so much was a blessing. And my mum was a bit more, she's more working class, and was, when I started doing it, was very much like, well, I think get an education and all that. And then when I started making money from it, she was like, oh, you make money from it?
Yeah.
Well, fine. So that's, but that's interesting that because what did you do then before you were a comedian? Did you have a so-called proper inverted commas job?
All manner of things. Because I was at college when I met the mother of my children, and then she became pregnant. So I had to quit college after a couple of years. I was going to go into care work. So I was training for that. And and then I met Lisa, and then she became pregnant. So I was like, right, well, we're gonna have to get a job. That's what's going to happen. She's going to have a kid, my child. I need to get a job. So I ended up working in care homes and things like that in the early 90s. And then I went on to be a bus driver and a van driver, and I worked in all manner of places. Just kind of, I could never find something that I really wanted to do. I always never felt settled. I was always bouncing around.
Yeah.
And Mum was like, just pick one. Just pick one, like, because they always said, like, just get a job. It doesn't matter what you do, just get a job, because you've got to pay your rent and you've got to live. Doesn't matter. So it wasn't, even at school, there wasn't any kind of talk of career. I wanted to be a chef for a bit, but then someone said it's unsociable hours, so I didn't do it. And now I'm a comedian. But I found my vocation when I was 32, and I've since found the thing that I'm really good at. But it doesn't make sense to a lot of people, No.
But you've also added podcast. Podcasting wasn't so big a thing even when you started, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just sort of in its nascent form. But
yeah.
That's interesting. So your parents were get a job, and then when you eventually like, I've got a job as a comedian. What was that? Were they just like, well, we didn't mean this.
Well, they wanted something.
We didn't mean any job. We meant one of 5 jobs.
yeah. Well, they just wanted me to, like my mum, my dad. My dad was a civil servant. He used to work. He was at Whitehall. He was HMRC, and his boss was Gordon Brown at one point.
Oh wow!
So that's a very sort of middle class. It's a very good job. Then my mum worked in a bakery in a factory that makes Kingsmill and all the bread and things. So she did night shifts at that. So I've had so it's a very middle class and very working class sort of combination. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was just like my dad was more like, look, you just, as long as you're happy, as long as you can pay the bills, you just find what it is.
That's nice.
And so he was like that, but my mum...
So that's your dad's, sorry to cut you off, that reminds me of my dad in terms of not the most effusive with saying I love yous, but actually wanting you to be happy is kind of his way of showing that. That's a loving side to show, isn't it? Because I know on this podcast it's kind of annoying to be like, I feel like a sort of whiny bastard going, well, so my dad say I love you, but it's like there is different ways of showing it, right? And I think that's a very underrated way, which is just a sort of just being happy that you're happy is a big thing. Not every parent does, right?
No, exactly. And I remember many times my dad would say, like, I was really big on music, loved music, and we were always putting records on, and Top of the Pops was always on, and we were watching. I remember there'd be every year there'd be like a marathon of music videos and live gigs, and it would go on all Saturday and all Saturday night. And my dad and I would just sit there watching all these different things, and so music was a thing. And I remember talking about that and talking about being famous, and my dad just said like that, when you make your first million, I'll be your accountant. And I remember him saying that. So there was that.
That's funny.
So he did believe. Yeah. So there was there was that. And my mum's very supportive as well, but she's more like, she comes from a very working class background, so it was like, just get a job, mate, in a factory or wherever it is, and you just do that, and you don't think about anything else, because you've got your kids and you've got things, you've got to just get a job. So
interesting.
But
those two different attitudes, though, actually, I think make up a lot of being a successful creator. I know that sounds wanky, but because you need that. Everyone thinks, oh, that guy's funny, but you need to have like an insane work ethic. I really do believe that in this.
Certainly now, yeah.
You can be the odd person. Maybe back in an era and there was less people and get a little. You still need luck. We all need some luck and a break.
Of course.
But,
yeah.
But you need that like work ethic of just like work, and then you need the other thing, which is the sort of pursuit of of a thing that makes you happy rather than just a thing that's work, which I think is those two kind of factors made you a comedian.
Well, this is it. I always felt when I was working, wherever I was working, I'm like, nah, this isn't it. This can't be it. I was a bus driver. And I remember there was the table of old guys that had been there for like 30 years. They were like the old guard, and they'd all sit on the table together, and everyone kind of, sort of revered them as the elder statesman of the bus garage. And I remember the first time I actually was accepted and got to sit down with them, and they took, we had a chat, and one of them just turned around and said, "Well, you'll never leave." And I think I left the next day.
I just love it.
I am not doing that. I can't. I just couldn't. I think with comedy, it's so open-ended. There isn't, like, you do the gigs, and now you can do podcasts, you can write a book, or you can do whatever. There are other avenues. There's so many different things you can do. And it's a very, like I say, it's a very open-ended career. Could go anywhere.
Yeah, there's, and people, anyone with any type of job, if you're finding some happiness in it, it's great. And it's not so, but there is something that I agree in terms of the variety element of what we can do is a really exciting thing of it. It's like, I kind of, I think just literally from my dad hating what he did. And I was like, why spend 40 hours a week to be, not enjoying that time? So the great thing about this is podcast, scrambling that, and then get to do stand up, and you're just keeping, I think, your brain engaged, and you're still excited about things, which when you can be at that point where you're getting jaded. Yeah, I think chatting to jaded people in an industry is a great advert for making you do something that doesn't make you feel that way. And you have to, there's obviously something in us that pushes us on to keep creating and keep doing new things, because you're only answering to yourself, unless you've kicked on and then you're doing, you're involved in movies or in TV or whatever, and then deadlines. There are deadlines. People need things from you. But when you're on sort of my level, you're kind of doing it for yourself. You're doing it like people like the podcast, and they expect it every week. So there's that element to it. So there are deadlines of a sort. But if you stop tomorrow, people would kind of go, "Oh, I used to enjoy that. Oh well." Isn't that like that's very true? But you wish you'd break everyone's heart, but they'd be like, "Oh, that's annoying."
Oh well, I'm going to go and listen to this one now.
If only there was another podcast that had been made that I could listen to in the world.
Yeah, going back to what you said, actually, I got in just in time because I remember Brad Acton, who was to do with the Hardcore Listings boys on the Distraction Pieces network. He messaged me after I'd been on Hardcore Listings, and he said, "You should do a podcast. They're going to blow up. There's about to be a huge wave where everybody's going to be doing it." And I was like, "Okay, let's do it." So I got in. I was like Indiana Jones running across the rope bridge as it's dropping away behind him, just like running along.
You did, yeah. I mean, I feel like that about many things in our careers, and we're like, I feel like you can either. Well, it depends. That's the positive way of looking at it. You can always be. You could have been like, if I'd done it 7 years earlier, then I'd be. Everyone always goes, "Oh, you should have done this in 1998." It's like writing out here. You used to get paid fucking 20 million an episode to write on Friends and all this shit. But there's always, the good thing is there's always different little nooks and niches to capitalize on. So just to go back to parents, and so I love the fact that your dad was kind of like early accidentally kind of osmosising your fame. When you were younger yourself, was it like a disciplined household? Was it like if you fucked about, did you get in trouble? And because I think disciplines again, you have to kind of be. There seems to be a common thing where a lot of people on here, is like a mix of being ill-disciplined as a kid, but still somehow having a level of discipline to. Does that make sense?
Yes, they were. Because I come from a time like the 70s and the 80s where violence was just in the air. At some point.
Sorry, that's a really funny but bleak sentence. Which just you walk down the street and there's people just like karate chopping each other as you walk to the shops.
Yeah, that song that everyone was kung fu fighting is pretty accurate. It's just,
instead of love is in the air, violence is in the air.
I think because it was a time of the 70s, much like now, was a time of extreme hardship for a lot of households, and we were luckier than most. Like I say, we didn't want for anything. Mum and Dad made sure that we had everything we needed, and always made sure that Christmas was great, and we had presents and things. And but there was, you were scared of your parents. You were scared of adults. You were scared that if you fucked up, you were going to get a clip around the ear hole. You were going to get someone somewhere would punch you in the head and you go, what was that for? They go, I know your mum. And you're like, what? Okay. And it was just accepted that a grown up could cause you some damage. So
I think you're talking about the waves you just got on at the end of. I got on the end of that. I remember my dad clipped me around the ear when I was 3.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe a week later the government were like, or whoever, people were like, can we just not hit our kids? Like 89, just before we hit 1990.
That's it. Yeah,
he's got his clip around the ear. And
I think that was it was the band was coming in, so everyone like the night before, just kids around there got their head punched in.
It was like the final night before lockdown in the pandemic. Everyone getting hammered.
Like the purge, but for kids.
Everyone's got their smacking asses. Like, come on,
yeah, big foam hands and big foam asses.
Let's hire a jockey to help us get as many in as we can.
It was just you were just scared of your parents. You were scared of, but they weren't. It wasn't all the time. It was just there was just an air of something. If you messed up, something was going to happen to you. You were going to get reprimanded at school. There was you'd get the slipper, or you get. Which sounds funny when they say the slipper. It wasn't a slipper. It was a plimsoll. And so you had that rubber gym shoe. Those old school black with the elastic front. It was one of them, and it wasn't a slipper. It wasn't like Cinderella giving you a tap on the botty bot.
I was just thinking it's like the heaven and hell version of the Cinderella slipper. Like, just does it fit this guy's ass? Yes, it does.
Yeah. I remember being stood. I'll tell you the story. I remember. Because in our school,
you know it's going to be a good story when someone has to do that.
It's because it's just a bit mucky. It's just I went to an all boys school, and so a lot of things, a lot of sayings, a lot of things, and so to succeed was to receive oral gratification. And
right,
so we stood in the office. We busted the fence. There was a chain link fence that went all the way around the playground, and some of the pins had come out. We ended up all bouncing on this fence, and we busted it. We all got hauled into the headmaster's office, and we're all lined up. And Mr. Jones, and he's walking up and down. He's going, I don't know what it is with you boys. What is the matter with this generation? Don't you want to succeed?
Wow.
And we laughed so much, we all got slippered. Because we couldn't explain to him what we were laughing at.
Oh, that's very funny.
Come here, son.
So yeah, parents, violence. But they let you do. They weren't, like I say, it was a weird. They were really good at letting you kind of make your own mistakes and finding your own way with a little bit of guidance. But if you really step too far, I think my dad had a really tough upbringing. His mum was awful. My nan. And
Did you meet her? Did you meet her as a kid?
Yeah, she was a stony-faced woman. She was
that's
not
interesting.
to be fucked with.
Really? Were you like? There's always is that thing that you've always got like one grandma who's nice and one who's a bit scary.
Yeah, grandma, my nanny Quick. She's lovely. She's still alive. Love my nanny Quick. She's beautiful. And to a certain extent, I love Nan Wilson, but she was hard work. And you could see, like, she put my granddad through absolute hell. To the point, I remember my dad said recently, I stood up to her and said, don't talk to Dad like that. And my granddad took him to one side. I went, look, you'll just make it worse. Don't worry about it.
Oh, God.
So he had that to deal with as a child. And so he's bringing that, they didn't have therapy back then. So he's bringing that into when he became a parent. And there's already an element of him going, I don't want to be my parents. Mm-hmm. But then there's still that whole generation of parents that just think that you discipline with a hard, in a hard way. And so, you're kind of, we were in that kind of adjustment period.
Yeah, he was like the first. He was the very like slow adopter of trying to. Yeah, like it feels like there's that element of him in there, just trying to be like supportive of what you love, but he can't quite. Yeah, it's like it's a vulnerability, isn't it? If he says,
yes.
"I love you" and all this or something. It's my dad's like. What was the thing like? Apparently, he used to come down to sort of breakfast, and his parents are sitting both behind their big broadsheet newspapers, sort of vaguely nodding in his direction. Yeah. It's like, no, I don't know what that is. It's like it is. It's a fear of if you open yourself up too much, then I don't know what. It's a crazy fear because what are we worried about? It's going to happen. It's going to make you a better person.
Well, this is it, but it's that fear of looking weak. You know, we're all, you know, stiff upper lip, and you've got to rule with an iron fist, and I think that's what we were dealing with when we were kids. You know, that there was still that hangover from that, and you know, like there was but then there's the extreme. So there was the fear. You were scared of your dad, you were scared of your mum, but at the same time, then there'd be the other side of things where we had the best holidays. We used to we'd go camping in Cornwall, and they were fantastic. Like we'd pack the car up of an evening, like properly. And this makes me sound old. This is before the M25 was built.
That does make you sound old. That's
Yeah,
like saying,
you know.
before when smoking was still allowed on aeroplanes. It's the same sort of thing.
So I remember driving from Orpington in Kent, in sort of southeast London, all the way down to Cornwall, and it would take all night to get down there. And this little car that would go like 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, and it was an adventure. And I used to love that. So there was those great bits where they do wonderful things. They took us to museums. They took us to all these wonderful places. But then there was the extreme of you're kind of scared of them if you messed up. So yeah, it's a funny time. But I don't regretting it.
No, you don't regret it. Yeah, exactly. It made you've turned out all right, haven't you? So
you kind of you kind of suss out the bad bits, and you go, well, I don't want to slap the kids. You know, I don't want to do that. And I know that I just want to be. I ended up being more mates with my sons. I don't know if that did them any good, because I was still quite young myself. So
yeah, you were very near their age. I mean, that's quite a nice. So your son, you're like 20 years older than your son?
Yeah. So my eldest he's just about to turn 30 next week, and
that's exciting.
and my youngest is 24. And they're like my mates. Like we send each other music stuff, and they borrow my clothes. You know, we're like mates. It's really.
I would borrow my dad's clothes if they didn't stink and weren't 8 times too big for me. But yeah,
a musty Christmas jumper would look great on you, mate.
It'd be a great tent if I want to live on the street for a bit, keep everyone else away from me. That's so. So you're worried. You think that's like a nice thing in one level, but also maybe not the best thing for them. Is that what you're kind of saying?
I mean, they're top boys. They're like other, and I'm not just saying that because they're my lads, but other people will say, "Oh, mate, your boys are brilliant. They're so lovely, and they're so, you know." And you can see how they interact with other people. You can see they're decent dudes, and so I don't think it's done on that. I think maybe when they were younger. I don't know. I think they're all right.
You're being a comedian about it, or criticise. You're looking for you've had a decent gig, and you're like, I didn't
worry about the things I could have done.
That one got a C instead of a B at GCSE design technology. If I just locked him in his bedroom for an extra 2 days, it'd been fine.
I think there was a lot because their mother and I broke up when they were very young, so we spent the 90s getting back together and breaking up again, and in year 2000 Lisa and I broke up.
You were like Oasis.
So, yeah, basically, if we spent the 90s being Oasis. We were the Liam and Noel of the parenting world. And we loved each other, but we couldn't be in the same room. And I think but we never used the kids against each other, even at our dark. Like we're best mates now, Lisa and I. But at the time,
that's good. That's
we I was at Keanu's wedding. My eldest called Keanu, which I'm so glad Keanu Reeves didn't turn out to be a paedophile. Oh my God,
mate, he's the best celeb. Honestly, have you seen all the stories about him? Like how he's the nicest bloke in the world.
Yeah. Even before the internet, and he's been through so much awfulness. The man has had all manner of stuff.
Oh, he has, hasn't he?
Flung at him, and even to have endured all that, to then still be one of the most legendary human beings that's ever lived, is incredible. But that's. Being at Keanu's wedding, and then Lisa was there with her fella, Rob. And we just get on, it's just really nice. Even though at times we hated each other. Never used the boys against each other. We were always communicating. It was never, you can't see the boys this weekend. There was always great lines of communication.
Have you?
That's worked out.
That's lovely. And are you I guess with that close age, have you you go for beers with your sons, that sort of thing? Is that a thing you've done or have done? Because then did your dad, like I talked about this before with Pip, and was like, my dad, like all he really wants is me to have a beer with him, but like and when I'm not in the mood, it like upsets him. But I don't know if if that relates to you and your kids, or your dad and you have that sort of bond in any way.
We went. Well, the way my dad and I stayed in the way our sort of relationship stayed sort of we stayed with. We had a good bond. Was that he took me to see the Damned, my first band when I was 14. And that was at Hammersmith. We were watching the Young Ones one night, and then it was an episode called Nasty. It was a Halloween one, and this band, the Damned, were on, and I'd heard of them vaguely. And I remember my dad and I were both sat there like Homer Simpson and Bart watching the monster truck advert.
Yeah,
we were both like, what is this? And then the next thing I know, Dad's bought tickets for us to go and see the Damned. And so ever since then, we've seen the Damned, God knows how many times. I think every time they tour, we go.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, we go and see them all the time. We've been to see them countless times since 1986. We've been to see the Damned nearly every year. We saw the Ramones. We saw Public Image Limited. We saw so many great bands over the years, and that's how my dad and I communicated with Few Music and going to see bands and stuff. So.
And then you've passed that on with your kids in a nice way, where you're sharing music with each other.
Yeah, exactly. So it's that, and like my dad and I we'd go to the pub every now and again when I was about 18. And I think back now to the conversations I was having with him, I sound like such a dickhead. I was always talking about fighting and being hard. Because that's what I thought.
Violence was in the air.
Yeah, it was.
Violence
in the air.
Yeah, you had to talk about that.
But my dad and I we just go to the pub and then we'd stumble home. And like my dad gave up drinking quite a long time ago, but when I was 18, we used to go and have a pint every couple of weeks. We go to the pub on a Friday night and just get pissed. It was good.
It's it's quite a special thing, I think, that you and your dad have this. The fact that you share such an interest, because weirdly, like, what's it called? My old man is like, he's awesome, but he doesn't love. It's one of those things. I love sport and watching football, but like neither of my parents do really. My mum likes tennis actually, so that's a little weird bond. She likes tennis and murder shows. That's my little bond with her. It's a funny Venn diagram of stuff that we share. I'm like, have you seen this one where this child goes missing in the first episode and then they don't find her for ages? But my dad is like, his stuff is so like, it's so bizarre. He's into like old documents and history. Like he can't remember anything I've just told him, but he can remember who was the commander in chief of the British forces in 19. One of those sort of olds. But it's very odd to have got no real shared interest. So I'm sort of, I guess envious is not really the right word, because it's just, it is the way it is. But it's something quite lovely about having that really direct thing that you guys have in common. Have you done a 3 generations visit to the Damned with your kids as well?
No, well, my boys aren't really into. My youngest is studying music at BIM in Bristol as we speak, and so he's really into his music, and he sends me all manner of stuff. And but my eldest is more sort of, he's a dancer, so he's more into sort of hip hop and street dance. He does all that. We've not been. I don't see. That's the thing. I think when they used to come, there was a few times I'd got in from gigs or I'd been out, and the lads were at I was with my ex partner, and she'd been looking after the boys, and I'd come in drunk, and it put them off a little bit because I'd be all exuberant and jumping up and down and going, hey, and they were like, oh no, I don't want to be around this. So we didn't. I took Keanu out for a beer when he turned 18, and I lived in Greenwich at the time with my missus out India, and we went into. I remember we did a pub crawl around Greenwich, ended up in Up the Creek, and Tom Stade and Mike Wilmot were on, the Canadian comics, and so they proceeded to give him shots, and he got pissed in the creek. And we had a really good time, and then we were wandering back to the flat, and he went, is there anywhere else we can go, Dad? And there's a pub, it's called the Jaws and Dragon. My flat used to be behind that at the bottom of Blackheath Hill in South East London. And I went, well, we can go in here. And it's a gay pub. And they also do drag. They're drag going on a Sunday night. I'm like, we're going in. And so we went in, and as we walked in, all the guys in there were going, oh, hello, here we go. What's this? Look at this EastEnders shit going on. Thinking that I was like some kind of, I don't know, sugar daddy or something. And my son, it was his first experience of that kind of environment. His eyes are all big going, what have you brought me to? I go, no, you're going to have a good time. So we had a few beers and some shots, and we watched the drag queens, and we had a really good time. I haven't been out with the youngest until Christmas, just gone. We went out Christmas shopping, and then there's a pub I like to go to, the Blue Post in Soho.
Oh yeah, I love that pub.
I love that pub. I'm in there. If I'm in Soho, I'll always go in there. And I took him in there, and it was the first time he and I had a couple of pints, and we were just talking about music and girlfriends and things, and it was a really nice moment. But that's taken a while. So it does happen. But we haven't been to gigs together yet.
You've just reminded me of I've noticed you're just funny. You just talking of this like alcohol way of connecting with a son is. My dad is. I don't know where it comes from in his family of his parents, but. Even when I was a kid, he was like, "Have some wine." I was like 7. Have a bit of wine. Genuinely, he was like, "Have a sip of wine. Have a sip of wine." All this, and then we went on an all-inclusive holiday in the Caribbean. Me, my dad, and my sister. Because my mum didn't travel at the time because she got agoraphobia going on.
Oh shit! Sorry.
But she's got past that now, which is good. But so it was always a bit weird anyway because my mum wasn't there. But my dad forgot I was like 16 and I didn't have. You had to have a wristband to drink, and I was like too young. And then my dad and these 2 other guys I met on holiday. There we were having a laugh, and then my dad's like, "You guys need a proper drink. Don't worry, I'll get it. I've got the." And he got us because it was like all inclusive. He got us like I think we had like 6 tequila sunrises each.
Oh no!
And we were like violently sick. And then, like the next day, next day at 7 a.m, we'd booked a Jeep Safari, which was like going into and I just threw up. I had to stop every 10 minutes to throw up. And then the guy running it's like some Lucian guy just absolutely cracking up at me, being like lightweight. And then I think and then I was like, that's a kind of a fun, like dad trying to connect, but also like so responsible. Remember the other parents, the other kids were like, did you just get our underage kids hammered? My dad's like, yeah, on paper, but it was meant in a nice, loving way.
Well, this is it. My dad I'd ring my dad and say, "Can you come down the shops and get us stuff?" And he'd come down and he'd get it.
We had fun. We had fun dads who
and he'd go. There was times.
Did he ever buy you porn? No. So one of my mates' dads, and we were like 12. I won't say. Do I say his full name? No, it doesn't matter. Anyway, he was like, he got a Playboy, and we were like, oh my god, this is bizarre. I don't know what we're supposed, but it was like his dad or his stepdad, someone like that bought it for us. I was like, this is a funny thing. What are you doing buying a 12-year-old?
Do you know what? I was with my ex, and her son was the same age as Keanu. So it was the Christmas where they became teenagers. And we got in their stocking. There's a little bottle of whiskey and a rhythm magazine.
Wow.
Yeah.
What age? What when you say teenage, you mean 13?
It's 13, 14. I might have been 16. I don't think it was as irresponsible as that. Might have been 16.
Oh, 16's fine, mate. You could smoke at 16. It's fine.
But a rhythm magazine and some booze.
I'm not familiar with Rhythm. Is it one of the good ones?
No, it's not called. It's just I think it was from the TV show Bottom when Rick
I love
goes,
Bottom.
Yeah, when you're upstairs with your Rhythm magazines.
Oh yes, I used to love that show so much, man. That's
such a great show. But that was we did that, and so.
I just did that awkward thing of going, what kind of a parent does that? And you're like, this type of parent. Mate, this has been great. Before we wrap up then, I'm just going to, my dad, I've got him, I got him to do a bit of research into who Rich Wilson is. Because my dad, just don't take it personally. He doesn't know who anyone is.
No.
He doesn't know anyone who's been alive after 1972. Is everyone's dead that he knows. So you don't take it personally. But I did get him to record a question. So he looked at your website.
Oh no,
don't worry. He's just got one question for you.
What are the demographics of your audience?
Oh.
What are the demographics of your audience? I think he looked on your website and I think it said, does it say like working class comic or something? Does it say that on your website?
Yeah, there's also.
So I think he looked at, when I said do research, I think he read the main thing on your website and based a question off that. I think it's a good question, though, because you've probably got a bit of a diverse audience based on the podcast and then on live shows.
It is it's very diverse, actually. I think based on, I am working class. And a lot of what I talk about obviously comes from a working class perspective, but there's things I talk about. I talk about my experience working in a gay sauna, what I did there, and I talk about I've got material about gender neutral toilets and the trans issues, and talking about that. And so I get people from all over the place messaging me saying thank you. I enjoyed that. So it's quite a broad demographic. I think there's a generation of us. There's people that my age and a bit younger that were, we were the jilted generation. We were the ravers, and now we're older. We're middle class, but we still want it. We're still buying funky trainers. We're still getting out there, but people are saying to us like, "Oh yeah, but you're old now." I go, "No, we rave, but we rave during the day."
Yeah, we rave at a sensible hour.
Yeah,
I like that.
yeah. So,
And if you go to Rich's gig, make sure you compliment him on the item of his clothing more than his comedy.
I don't care if you don't laugh all night, but if you don't comment on my trainers, I'll be really upset.
Yeah, they cost you money. You spend money and time coming up with them.
I will say this before we go, that the best thing that ever happened to me, parent-wise, so I grew up with
please
music.
tell me.
So with music, I grew up with that, and so my dad had this incredible record collection. My mum and dad always into music, and so they go off and see Queen. I remember recently, it's like very recently, trying to get hold of them, ringing them, and they got back to me the next day. I'm like, "What happened? Were you all right?" I mean, "Yeah, we were at Alice Cooper." So they still go off and they do things.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then
I love that.
The day that my dad said to me, "Do you want my records?" was the single best day of my life.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. That's so nice.
And even now he's like, "You still got it?" I'm like, "I haven't sold it. It means more to me than anything. It's so important to me." So, Dad, if you're listening, and you might do, I love you and thank you for the records, Dad.
Oh, that's so nice. Well, there you go. It's that. That's his way of saying I love you without having to
Exactly.
actually say it out loud. He hands them down to you.
Yeah.
Fuck, that's
Perfect.
nice. And if my dad's listening, I don't want that Christmas jumper passed down to me, mate.
Give it to him, Dad. Give it to him.
I'm going to burn it at the stake.
I want this to be sent to you in the States. It's perfect for LA.
Well, and if your dad is listening, let's upgrade that "love you" to an "I love you" next time.
Yes,
but,
Dad.
We know, but we also don't be bullied into it. Just when you're ready. But yeah, actually, that leads me to the final thing, Rich.
Okay.
Based on that, I've kind of sort of trodden on my own thought there, which is I'm giving your dad advice on saying I love you, but I always get the guests to at the end just have a little address John Martin and just tell him just any little anything you think will encourage him to just finally say I love you to me.
I just think he just needs to dig deep. He knows it's in there. He does. You can tell even by that little snippet that I heard there. The fact that he's willing to do that just goes to show what he thinks of you. Because most dads would look at what we're doing and just go, "It's nonsense." And your dad sounds quite austere and quite, he was a lawyer and he's quite sort of, he's well read and I would assume that he would find this complete nonsense. But for him to take the time to do that just goes to show that it's in there. So I reckon he could do it. It's right. He's there. He's right there. If he's doing this, if he's sending you, if he's willing to do that for you, it's right there. I know it's coming. Oh, come on. You can do it.
Look at that.
Come on.
So inspirational. I love it. Really. Before we then fully go, mate, anything we can obviously, if anyone watches this on Patreon, we've got your podcast. It's right there on the graphic. Insane in the Membrane podcast. And you've got a spin-off podcast as well?
We've got Insane in the Membrane. We've got Insane in the Fembrane, which is where I have, I talk to women about what it's like to be a woman, because obviously I don't really know. And it's been incredibly insightful. I've learned so much from actually having one-on-one conversations with women and what women have to deal with, because we just see it from our perspective and it's completely different, obviously. I've also got Insane in the Them Brain that we did where we talked to people who identify as non-binary, because that was a new conversation to me. So I wanted to find out what it actually feels like to be non-binary, and so there's all manner of things. We talk to people from all over the world, from all different areas of life. It's well worth your time.
Yeah, Rich's pods are great, and I love the fact that they are, and I like the fact that you're. Thank you. I love the fact that you're open to learning about new things and all that stuff, which is just a good, just like exciting character trait. And people who are curious about life and love Rich. Every time I did yours the other day as well, and like we get the nice balance of some laughy laughs and some more poignant stuff.
That one we did talking about the supermarkets, mate. Still funny.
Are you doing that as a bit? Yeah, are you doing that as a bit?
It's coming.
Yeah?
It's in the new show. I've got a new show called "You Could Have It So Much Better," it's going to
Great.
be in that. So yeah,
I love it, man. Good, mate.
Nice.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you,
Speak
Chris.
to you soon. I love you.
love you too. Thanks, man.
A podcast from producer Paul.co.uk.